Hello, everyone. I am Remy.
I'm Lucas.
And I'm Casey.
And this is day 6 of the Day Ones Discourse. Today for you guys, we're going to be talking about a slightly less dictated conversation on one specific topic. However,
fancy words.
Oh yeah. Well, Casey and Remy were kind of busy gallivanting the past week and left me to my own devices. So I found myself kind of delving into more of my creative side, and it kind of gave us a good idea for a podcast in terms of we want to look at kind of the power of creativity and passion and how it can seep out into the rest of your lives with little tiny steps and effort that are put into it. So with that, do you guys want to start the conversation off?
Sure. So kind of a little background about me is I've always been really interested in creating things, whether it be like poems or stories or anything like that. Yeah. So I've been doing that stuff basically since 8th grade or something, and it's really kind of bled out into my life in what I tend to like in books and movies. I like the more creative, more flowy, more story-based movies and books rather than action-packed, the superhero movies and stuff like that. And my creative outlet was always just writing, heartfelt stuff and fun and cool adventures that makes a good story. And because of this kind of background of mine, I've always been drawn towards like other types of things in my life that are more story-based or more smooth or something like that. So it's kind of an interesting connection you can make there with what Lucas was saying on how, he's kind of delved more into his creative outlet this last, week or so. And it can really, bleed into your other interests as well once you start exploring it.
Yeah, I can kind of relate because I don't know, we've mentioned this before. I have a big habit of getting really into something for about a week or two maybe, and then it just dies off and I have no more motivation to do it.
Getting into something, becoming utterly obsessed with every single facet of the idea and researching it so thoroughly, and then coming to me and saying, "Okay, dude, have you heard about this new thing?"
Well, I tend to do that a lot, and when it comes to creative things, I do the same exact thing. Like, there's been times where I want to learn the guitar, and I try for like a week, and I'm like, "Oh, this is awesome! Like, I'm gonna learn this so fast. I can finally do this." And then after a week, I'm like, "Yeah, I don't have the motivation. Like, I don't want to do this." Same thing with like one time I wanted to try writing a book, and I got like for a good week I was just cranking it out, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is my future. Like, I can do this." And then there was a point where I found something else to do, and I was just off of it already. And so I always have a problem when it comes to creative stuff of just actually staying committed, and I never get past that point where I want to keep doing that thing. I never get past that because I feel like with everything that you do, there's one like real moment in time where you have to prove to yourself that you actually want to do this and that you have the determination to do it. And I tend to not hit that point a lot. And I think it's just because I tend to be lazy half the time. But yeah, that's my issue when it comes to creative stuff.
So with the creative stuff for you, you get into stuff for a week or two. Is the creative stuff the stuff that just kind of snags you for longer, or is it the less creative stuff that holds your interest?
I think it mostly comes down to like the difficulty of what it is I want to do. Because if it's something super simple, something that I can pick up on really easily, then I'm like, yeah, like I'll keep doing this. But if it's something that actually is going to take time and commitment, I like think to myself, oh, do I actually need to spend a bunch of time on this? Is it going to be worth it in the end? Am I going to actually learn this thing? And so that's my thought process when it comes to that stuff. Yeah.
Well, I'll kind of give you guys a background of kind of why I decided that this would be a kind of a cool topic to talk about. But one thing that I've been getting super into, and I know Remy and Casey have kind of mentioned it in the past a little bit, but in the past year, I've gotten really into Dungeons and Dragons and the whole kind of world of D&D. And after Remy introduced me to the game, as a player, I took up the mantle as the dungeon master, the game master, and I formed my own group up at U of I at the start of January 2019. And from the past year, I've just been slowly, I was running through like a normal book campaign. And then over this past summer, I've kind of written my own homebrew campaign. And I've noticed that as I've been writing more and I've been trying to delve into that more creative side, I've noticed the creativity just like seep out into all the other aspects of my life. For instance, like when we got into this podcast, it just kind of exponentially tripped off this wire in my brain where all of a sudden, rather than just thinking, oh, I'm just going to go about my day-to-day things, I'm constantly now looking for ways to be creative throughout my day-to-day life. So I'll constantly be looking for different things to talk about during the podcast, or I'll be looking about ways to create an encounter out of something that I actually like encountered in real life for our D&D group that I'm going to be running in the fall. And I've also noticed that like I've just been trying to pick up just other creative outlets as well. Like I know I Snapchatted you guys the other night. Like I was up super late and for some reason it was like 1 o'clock in the morning and I couldn't fall asleep, but I ended up writing like full song lyrics for a song, and which will never be released, by the way, because I'm an awful singer and I don't know how to produce music. But I've just noticed, I don't know, I've been getting super into like those kind of things, and like drawing was another one of them. So I think it's cool to see, like, I don't know. I think it's really interesting that the human brain will, once you do become passionate about something, you can watch it seep out into the rest of the aspects of your life. I mean, oh yeah, Remy, what did you want to say about
Well, I was just you were talking about the human brain, which is what my next point was. When you actively engage your brain into something and you're actively, making your brain come up with new things, you start noticing your brain picking up on different things in your life. And so instead of, just going through your day-to-day activity, your normal thing where it's just the same thing every day, you don't have to put any mental effort in, you don't have to put any brain power into it. And then you one day change that, you start drawing, you start writing, you start creating, and then your brain starts expanding because it's no longer in this mold of, doing the exact same thing every day. And then your passion starts. I think that's where your passion really will start.
So kind of going back to what you were saying about like the podcast and how that's kind of making you branch out creatively.
Yeah.
Like I can definitely understand that. I mean, I obviously not to the extent that you have, but like when I'm just sitting there not really thinking about anything, my mind immediately goes to the podcast. And it's like I may not come up with a lot of ideas, but I'm still like constantly thinking about it.
It's fun. Like I completely get where you're coming from, because it's so fun knowing that right now we have basically zero listening base, and like that not a whole lot of people are going to be even probably listening to this in the near future. Regardless, it's still fun to be creating something, to be putting something out there, and to be accessing, those creative muscles that are working in our brains that ordinarily like we wouldn't necessarily be accessing as, say, for Casey, you an accountant, for me like an engineer, for Remy like medical sciences. So
yeah, this is something, because I love doing this kind of stuff, but the problem is, like I said, my commitment. Like there was a point where we started like the podcast, and maybe after like the first few days of recording, I was kind of thinking like, oh geez, like, is this really worth it? Like what's going on? Like, is this going to pay off, or is it going to be worth it? And it took me a little bit to just kind of get past that point. And that, what I said earlier, that's kind of the point that I struggle to get past, getting past the point where you don't see any like result from it. You don't see any like payoff. And this is probably like one of the few things in my life that I'm like actually really passionate about, that I want to do, because it's just different. It's different from things that I've done before, and it's refreshing to be able to do something like this.
Yeah, so I actually want to go to one of your points, like, is it worth it? Will I have a payout of whatever I'm doing? You get into something and you're like, a week later, you're like, this is hard, I'm really pushing through this, but goodness gracious, I don't want to do this anymore because I can't see any payout. And sometimes, you just got to push through that and be like, there may not be any, physical payout or anything else, but you're making yourself better as a person, you're expanding your creativity.
Exactly. And that's the exact thing that got me amped up to talk about this, is literally just say this podcast. We have Remy's girlfriend who listens to it, and that's it. No one else ever listens to it. All of our social media is dead for the rest. We're dead in the water for the rest of the time. I will be completely satisfied knowing that I'm investing into a creative side of myself, knowing that I am then trying to take action to unlock another side of like my persona, that I'm not just a one-faceted type of person. I'm not just, the engineer, like business student up at U of I. I'm now, I'm someone who's trying to contribute. I'm trying to be, a digital creator or someone who's at least accessing a creative medium in some way.
No, yeah, I'm really excited to see just where I am or how different I am for however long we do this. Yeah. Just to see like how much has changed, how much I've developed, because this is definitely stretching my thinking, not necessarily my thinking, but it's making me talk about things that I want to talk about. And it's like, like, even if, like Lucas said, nobody ever listens to us, I'm satisfied just sitting here talking because honestly, it's super fun. Like, I definitely recommend, if you have any friends that you love talking to, start a podcast. It's so fun. Like, you just get to sit here and chat about things that you would normally chat about. So yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, and another kind of really cool thing is not only are we being creative as people, we're also being creative as a group. We're doing this as a group of 3. We're doing this as friends, and it really is a cool thing that our creativity can be shared and, stuff like that. And what Lucas was saying about his D&D campaign that he's writing, that's something that he gets to share with people as well. And honestly, when your creation is shared with other people, or you're sharing the creation with other people, that's the most satisfying part. And even if we know no one ever listens, the fact that I get to create something with you two just makes it all worth it in the end.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Yeah, for sure. You did talk about something earlier, Remy. I don't remember what triggered it in my brain, but it was talking about. It was when you were talking about making the initial leap beyond just being interested in something and then actually taking a hold of it and like pursuing it as a total, and then that in turn kind of turning the gears in your mind and then flipping the way that you're looking out on things. So I'm not sure if I talked about it when we were discording during the school year, but I downloaded that app Headspace, if you guys have heard of it.
Yeah.
It's like the meditating app. And because I was like, I had one class that I had like an hour break in, and I was like, you know what, I can do homework during that time, or I could try and de-stress a little bit, and then hopefully have a break in between all of like the core classes throughout the day. So I took up the Headspace, and I tried to start meditating, and honestly, if you guys haven't tried meditating, one of the biggest parts of it is just noticing and getting into the habit of noting when you're thinking and detaching things to yourself. So like typically when you'll try to like meditate to like fall asleep for say, or even for stress, you'll just try to focus on like say your breathing, and then you'll try to note thoughts that are connecting you personally to the outside world. And then you'll try to basically like detach yourself from those thoughts, let them kind of flow through your head. And honestly, it does, like to Remy's point, what he was saying earlier, I think it makes a big difference in the way that you look at the rest of the world. Because like when I got super into meditating for like a week, I wish that I would have held on to it more. Because I did notice a big difference in the way that I was thinking internally, because I noticed all the times that I was being negative, and I noticed that most of the times it was the way that I was perceiving the world, and then I was making these, I statements onto myself and these thoughts that were then attached to me rather than, my environment and my perception of them and so forth. So
yeah, so it's kind of an interesting thing, being able to take something and stay with it. And I think the biggest part of, start staying with something creative or staying something with it, you're just initially interested in getting into passion, is structure. Because a lot of times, you're going to say, I want to start writing, or I want to start drawing, or I want to start doing something. And you're like, I'll do it this time. Whenever I have free time, I'll start doing it, and you do it, the first week. But you don't get a schedule. You don't, say for 30 minutes today, I am going to do this. You're like, I'll just do it later. I'm tired now, I'll do it later. And you don't put aside that time. And 9 times out of 10, you lose interest in that. And I think the hardest part is getting that structure going and making sure you do take that time to get into this creative stuff. Because when a lot of people think about creating something, they think, oh, it's something fun, something I do outside of work, something I do outside of everything else. They don't think of it as something they have to schedule time for or have a structure for. And I think that's the initial, hard, breakthrough, is that you have to create a structure, you have to have a schedule, you have to do everything.
Especially when you're talking about individualistic things. Like group things, it's so much more beneficial, I would say, if you are doing it in a group, because then you have people to hold you accountable. Because then it's not just one person who's passionate about it, it's 2 other people who are passionate about it as well, in our case. And we're all going to be passionate about it, and we're going to feel those drives of passion for creation in different times. So then it's not just, the whimsy of, oh, I'm going to be doing this right now. Like when you are doing those individual creative things, I 100% agree. You have to be setting aside time for it, or else you're never going to get to it. It's going to be one of those things that you do for a week, like me with meditating, and then you give up on just because life becomes busy, or you just forget to a couple days in a row, and then it kind of fades out of your memory. So
yeah, I think accountability is probably one of the hardest things to keep, because especially like you're saying, if you're doing things individually, there's so much that you have to balance when it comes to that. Like you have your normal life, like you're doing all the stuff you normally do, and then you want to throw something in on top of that, something creative, something different. Like it's hard to force yourself to do those things, and it's just so much easier, especially like with us 3, to just have more than one person to keep you accountable for what you're trying to achieve. And I think it parallels with anything physical as well, like a sport, or just staying in shape. Oh, yeah. Like people try to improve themselves, and they try to do it by themselves. And I know that this is going to sound super like, oh yeah, I'm so cool, but the thing I noticed the most was when I started working out. Like just having someone else there to help you through everything and to do everything with you makes it 1,000 times easier to stay committed and actually go through with it. Because when you're just trying to do it by yourself, you have to find that internal motivation, and most of the time that motivation's lacking comparatively. And when you have someone else there to kind of push you through that stuff, push you through those ruts that you don't really think you're going to get out of, it makes it so much easier.
Yeah, so that's going to be about all the time we have today, but I just want to let you guys know that, go out there, start something, stick with it, create a structure, keep yourself accountable, get a group of friends together if you can, and go be creative, be passionate.
Yeah, do something new, try something different.
Yep. Yeah, I think you guys will be hard pressed to find that it seeps out into the rest of your life. It really does. So yeah.
All right, so we're gonna move into our song recommendations. Yep. Lucas, do you want to start? Oh, yep. That's a big old list.
Oh yeah. I started creating a list while you guys were gone. Okay, so this week's recommendation is gonna be "On Your Mind" by Floersch. I know I've recommended him in the past. He's an amazing artist. Please go give him some support. He deserves it. This is such a great song.
All right. Mine is going to be Rain Clouds by Overeasy. It's just a really smooth, good love song that you can feel, and if you're missing someone, it's a great missing you song. So go check it out.
My recommendation this week is going to be Headlights by Cape Francis. I don't know if either of you have actually heard the song, but yeah, it's just ultra chill, just so good to listen to, especially if you're like road tripping. Just recently I went to Montana to take my brother to college, and I was just listening to that song on repeat, and it's just so good. It's just definitely has that vibe. So yeah. So that's it for today. Feel free to reach us on our social medias. It's the Day Ones Discourse on Facebook and Instagram, and at the Day Ones Disc on Twitter. Feel free to tweet us, message us, DM us, anything. We really want to talk to you guys. So if you're listening, please hit us up.
Yep.
All right. You guys have a good day.
See ya.
Thanks for watching or listening.